Hey, what's up everyone? Tim here from Everyday Tactical Vids. Out for a walk this morning, taking in some New Hampshire wildlife. But the main reason I'm out here in the woods this morning is to check out the new Tops SXS knife. So here's a look at the knife. If you've never seen it before, you're probably thinking, that thing's definitely unique. It's meant to be the sidekick to the original. So the original is a larger version of this. It's called the Skull Crushers Extreme Blade SXB. This is the SXS, so it's the Skull Crushers Extreme Sidekick. So it's meant to be a compact version of it. The SXB is definitely a big, hefty, kind of overbuilt knife. Meant to be a survival knife, and this is kind of the smaller version of it that can do some of the tasks that the big one does a little bit more effectively as far as those smaller tasks. Definitely more wieldable for most people. If you've never met EJ Snyder, who's the designer of the SXB and the SXS, I mean, he's just a big dude, got big hands, and so sometimes that knife for certain people is just going to be too large. I've got large size hands, and this thing fits fine. The SXB, I've handled it, I've never reviewed it, but it's definitely a big, beefy, it's like, I would call it like it's still a knife, but it's just on the edge of like being like, okay, that's really a chopper. So, and that's what it's meant to be, like a multi-use tool, and this is the smaller version to do some of those smaller tasks more effectively. If you go into the Tops website, they're going to say that this is, it's a 5-inch blade, which it is, so it's still usable for a lot of people when they think about survival, but it's also usable as a camp knife and for other tasks as well, obviously. So your overall length is 10.13 inches, your blade length is 5.25 inches, and therefore your handle length is 4.88 inches. You got that black micarta with the nice red liners there for the handle. Your thickness is 0.19 inches, and your weight is 7.6 ounces. It does come with a Kydex sheath. I'll show you that in a minute. Some cool features to that sheath, some unique features that make it a little bit more multi-use than some of the other sheaths out there. So why did I get this knife for review? I just wanted to check it out. The SXB, I just never got around to actually reviewing it, so I thought, yeah, we'll check out the smaller version here. As you can see, you know, you got this big belly here, so that's one of your main cutting portions, and then it kind of cuts in down here, and then you got your sawback there. Again, if you haven't heard this before, but the sawback is not made to replace like a silky folding saw or your Baco folding saw. It's really meant for doing some basic cutting and some notches. One thing I can tell you is that if you need to split a piece of wood, you can basically get the get a groove in it, and then it's easier just to pick up and to snap in half. Show you the logo up close there. So there's that. The handle, again, for me with Tops knives, one of the challenges is that sometimes the handles are too thin. I like a pretty neutral but pretty chunky handle, and this one, even though it's small, is comfortable for me. There's the your two options for a lanyard hole. You can see that's kind of, let's see if you can pick that up there. It's not like you're going to be using that for a flathead screwdriver, but it definitely comes to a bit. It's angled in on both sides, so you can run a lanyard hole on both sides there. And then the other idea is that, oh, let me mention this here, and then up to here. So lanyard from there on both the hand, the underside of the handle and the top side of the handle. And then the other thing here is because this flares out at the end, kind of locks your hand in so that your hand's not going to come slipping off the back edge of the knife. When I've used this knife so far, I've been holding it like this or with my thumb just over the top, and you can see there's a little bit of jimping right there. You can rest your thumb up here. It's a little bit less comfortable, but it's not like these things are razor sharp, so if you need to do some push cuts like that, you can definitely do that. So $10.95 is your steel. That's true for a lot of Tops blades. If you're not familiar with it as a steel, it's generally really good for the outdoors because it'll keep an edge, but it's also easier to put an edge back on than some other steels that are out there. As it says in the back here, made in the USA. And there's a quick rundown, so let's start putting this thing through the paces. So I'm actually out on the property that's owned by the University of New Hampshire here, and there's a little spot here in the woods where people come and make campfires, so I thought, well, I'm gonna make a foundation for a campfire so somebody can show up and have it all set up for them. So just for kicks, we'll do that as we put the knife through the paces. So I got some wood processed down here. I made a little bird's nest with some hemlock, twigs, and branches, and then we've got the log cabin going. Now we're going to move on to making a couple feather sticks. Here's a couple curls just to start things off. A little more work, and there's some feathers. So just to check out the durability of the knife, and because there are some sort of processed logs around, we're gonna baton through these, break them up, so there's some firewood waiting for people. Here's some of the wood processed down. Just to give you a quick look at the function of the sawback. So obviously your length of pull is very short. But as you can see, it definitely gets into the wood there. All right, so here's our setup that we're leaving for somebody next time they need a fire. Got some feathers, some curls, some feather sticks in there. Got some small wood I processed down, some of the baton wood, another little bird's nest I made with some hemlock, and then some of the processed wood over here. Here's a quick look at your sheath. So it is Kydex. There's taking the knife out and putting it back in. And on the back you have these two loops that are called, I guess it's called the beta loop system. And let me take off my belt and actually show you what that looks like. So here are the two loops, and it's kind of cool. They got two American flags on the little buttons there. So you're gonna pop these open, and then you can readjust these 2 points to other points on the sheath. So if you want to set it up scout style, you're basically gonna move, you know, probably one down to like here, and then another one here. So it's made to be able to be set up for like standard belt style carry. If you have it like that vertically, you can do it scout style. You can run it through molly, you can run it through, you know, different loops on a pack or something like that. So basically made for a variety of different setups. Kind of a cool thing. Now if you want something that's gonna be super snug up against your belt with very little movement, you're probably gonna, you know, take this off and put on some sort of like Blade Tech lock or something like that, because it definitely does have some movement. But for me, I don't mind that, because if I'm climbing up over something, it gives a little bit of flex here, so the knife doesn't get hung up on my leg. All right, so I've had a chance to use this knife on camera and off camera today, as well as additional use, and let me give you some thoughts on it. First thing is that it's got just a unique design, just a totally unique flavor. So if you want something that's gonna stand out and, you know, be a unique thing that kind of catches your eye, and you're kind of like, yeah, my knife is different than a lot of the other blades out there, then this could be a knife for you. I will say, if you want like the full-fledged survival knife option, then I would go with the SXB. This thing, because it's smaller, is going to give you more control on some of that finer, more detail work. But yeah, it's also going to, just because of the size, the lower weight, all those things, it's not going to function like the SXB will, as far as being able to do a wide variety of tasks that are kind of more survival oriented. Let's talk about chopping. I think that, you know, this front portion of the blade, when you look at it, you're like, yeah, I'm going to chop with that. The weight is just under 8 ounces, right, 7.6. When I was using it, it reminded me of the Tops Light Trekker, which is just over 5. I think it's 5.1 ounces. So you can chop with it to do some little like chip type of tasks, but you're not going to be chopping through, you know, anything that's this big, or maybe one piece like that, but you're not going to want to do that for a long time. The other thing I'll tell you about chopping is, because of the pommel here, that does, like I said, lock your hand in, so it's not going to slide off. But if you try to loosen up your grip and chop like this, that thing's just gonna bash into your palm. So you really gotta find a different way to hold it. So you can hold it way down like this, maybe like a 2-finger grip, and chop. A lanyard would definitely help out. Or I'm trying to think how I think I found myself chopping more like this with my thumb up here and kind of going like this, because it locks in this pommel section, so it's not digging into your hand, like tapping into it. It just kind of locks in, and then boom, like this. So it did do that chopping. This portion right here, I did find some of that detail work a little bit easier to do. You saw some of those feathers that I got off the stick I was holding. Generally, when you're feather sticking, if you have the blade locked in and you're pulling the stick against it, you're gonna have a little bit more control. I felt like I had even more control holding the stick and cutting with this portion, like so. The sawback, it does work. Obviously, your length of pull is like maybe 1.5 inches, 1.33 inches, something like that. So I wouldn't plan on using that as like a main ping tool. But I can tell you, it does do the tasks well. And if you need to do it like a little chopping, a little slicing, a little sawing, this gives you a bunch of options in a very small package. Now for me, one thing is I really like a knife that tends to be a little bit larger for a survival knife. So like the Tops Kukri, I love that for survival. The SE Hungless, love that for survival. Even the SE6, because it's got some size on this, as far as a full-fledged survival knife, that's where I'd go. But as far as like a companion knife, a camping knife, an outdoors knife, I mean, you can imagine with that sweep in the blade there, doing some field dressing, probably a lot easier than with a massive blade, you know, like the Kukri or something like that. So yeah, I mean, the number one thing I think is to have the unique factor. The number two thing is the functionality is, I would say it's good at a bunch of tasks. It's not amazing at any task, and it's really not terrible at any task. It's good, and you know, depending on what you're going to be using it for, maybe good up to very good or great. But yeah, it did everything I put at it and put in front of it well. If you want something full-fledged survival, go bigger. If you want a tiny little companion knife, go smaller. But this is, I think, kind of right in between that can cross over both those worlds and do things pretty well. I did put my thumb up on the saw back there. I wouldn't want to use that for a very long time, keep my thumb up there. If I was making 20 feather sticks, that would eventually, I think it would eventually bother my thumb. With a pair of gloves, probably not so much. But yeah, you can rest your thumb up there for some cuts. I do think right here, or actually right here, where that jimping is, you can see that. Yeah, jimping right there. Kind of lock your thumb back in, gives you nice control on the knife. As far as your sheath system, good solid Kydex, good lock in. This thing is, you know, it's not gonna fall out. Tiny bit of movement in there, I don't know if you can hear that, but it's definitely solid. And I do like these beta loops. I like the idea of being able to set it up in a variety of different ways, you know, regular style, scout style, throw it on a pack. So right now on the Tops website, the SXS is running about $160. Prices can fluctuate depending on when you're watching this video, so you can head over to the Tops Knives website. I've got links down below to this knife, and you can pick it up over there if you'd like to. And yeah, I mean, like I said before, the unique factor is definitely there, and functionality, it definitely offers you good functionality across the array of tasks that I would put in front of it. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I want to hear also if you own an SXB or if you reviewed an SXB. Let me hear your thoughts on that, because I may think, I'm thinking to myself, I may want to check that one out as well, and compare the two now that I've actually checked out the SXS. So let's hear your thoughts and comments in the comment section below. All right, guys, thanks as always for checking out the videos here on YouTube. Please subscribe to Everyday Tactical Vids if you haven't done so already. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, check us out on Instagram, Tumblr, and Vero as well. More videos coming soon. Take care. SXB, Skull Crushers Extreme freaking A.